Hello, my friend. Tonight we stand in the darkness before dawn on a ridge of hard Attic earth, while the plain below waits in silence. The air smells of dust, sweat, olive trees, and fear. Far away, where the land slopes toward the sea, campfires tremble like fallen stars. Beyond them lie ships, hundreds of them, drawn up along the shore, their dark hulls resting beneath the pale sky. Men sleep beside shields, horses stamp in the night. Somewhere a commander whispers orders that may decide the fate of a city not yet ready to die. Athens is behind us, not the Athens of postcards and marble ruins, not yet. Not the Athens of museum halls and quiet statues, polished by centuries of admiration. This Athens is tense, poor in places, proud in others, still learning what it means to govern itself. Its houses are simple, its streets are narrow, its people are frightened, but awake. Somewhere within its walls, a potter worries about his children. A mother listens for news that has not arrived. An old man remembers tyrants, debts, and hunger. A young citizen tightens the leather straps on his shield and wonders whether the gods are watching. Across the plain, the Persian army waits. It has come from an empire so vast that most Greeks can barely imagine it. It has crossed seas, gathered tribute, swallowed kingdoms, and carried with it the authority of kings who call themselves rulers of lands beyond counting. To many watching from the hills, the Persians do not seem like an army only. They seem like history itself advancing, slow and irresistible toward a small city of farmers, traders, poets, craftsmen, and quarrelsome citizens. And yet, in this fragile hour, something strange is happening. The Greeks do not run. They stand in formation beneath the fading stars. Their bronze helmets hide their faces. Their round shields overlap. Their spears point forward. They are not united by a single emperor. They are not subjects of one king. They are men of a city, joined by oath, land, memory, custom, and argument. They have disagreed about almost everything. They have shouted in assemblies. They have struggled over law, honor, property, and power. But now the plain before them is empty and immense, and disagreement must become discipline. This is not where the story of Greece begins. It begins much earlier, in stone villages, on windswept islands, in palace storerooms, in mountain valleys, where shepherds watch the seasons move across the hills. But here, in this hour before battle, we can feel the story tighten. We can feel centuries gathering into one breath. Behind these men stand old myths, half-remembered kings, seafaring traders, buried warriors, dark centuries, and the slow birth of the city-state. Ahead of them lies something no one can yet name. A civilization is about to recognize itself. In the silence before dawn, a runner moves along the line. A murmur passes from man to man. The soldiers lower their spears. Their commanders know the danger. The Persian archers can darken the air with arrows. The Persian cavalry, if unleashed, can tear open a formation. The Greeks must cross the open ground quickly, and every step forward brings them closer to death. The plain of Marathon is not only a battlefield. It is a question laid flat beneath the morning sky. Can a small people resist a great empire? Can citizens defend a way of life before that way of life is fully formed? Can ideas survive if the bodies that carry them fall? The first light appears. It touches helmet rims, spear points, and the quiet faces of men who may never see their homes again. The line begins to move. At first, it advances with measured steps, shields heavy on left arms, spears steady in right hands. Then the distance closes. The waiting becomes unbearable. Dust rises from thousands of sandals. The pace quickens. Men breathe harder. The Persian camp stirs. Orders ring out. Archers reach for their bows. And suddenly, impossibly, the Greeks are running. The sound is not like legend. It is human. Bronze clatters, leather creaks, feet strike the ground. Men shout to steady themselves. Some call on Athena, some call on Zeus, some say nothing at all. The distance between fear and action collapses. The Persians see the charge and perhaps wonder what kind of people run toward arrows rather than away from them. For a moment, no one knows whether courage is wisdom or madness. Then the arrows rise. They cut into the brightening air. A dark rain against the morning. Shields lift. Men fall. Others step over them. The Greek line keeps moving, and now the plain is no longer silent. It is filled with impact, cries, dust, and the heavy shock of bodies meeting bodies. Spearheads strike wicker shields. Bronze presses into cloth armor. Men from distant lands see each other face to face for an instant, and in that instant the scale of empire becomes intimate. It becomes a hand, a blade, a breath, a wound. History often arrives like this, not as an idea, but as noise, not as marble, but as fear. We look back now and see temples, philosophers, sculptors, mathematicians, playwrights, and assemblies. We see democracy spoken of as an inheritance. We see columns glowing in the sun. We see the Parthenon, the theater of Dionysus, the dialogues of Plato, the histories of Herodotus and Thucydides, the tragedies of Sophocles, the cold clarity of geometry, the restless questioning of the mind. But those things were not guaranteed. They were not inevitable. They were fragile possibilities, held for a moment behind a line of shields. And even this is only one city. Far beyond Athens, other Greek worlds are breathing in the same age. Sparta trains its sons beneath a harsher discipline. Corinth counts its trade and guards its wealth. Thebes watches the balance of power with wary eyes. Across the Aegean, island communities sail between markets and sanctuaries. Along the coast of Asia Minor, Greek cities face the shadow of Persia more closely than Athens ever has. In Sicily and southern Italy, settlers build new temples under foreign skies. Everywhere there is rivalry, beauty, violence, invention, and longing. They call themselves Hellenes, but they are not one nation. They share gods, stories, games, language, and memory. They also fight each other with astonishing bitterness. Their world is divided by mountains and joined by sea. It is full of arguments, exiles, sacrifices, feasts, markets, prophecies, and graves. Out of these divisions will come an idea of civilization so powerful that later empires will claim it, imitate it, reshape it, and carry it across continents. Yet, on this morning, none of that can be seen clearly. There is only dust. The Greek center bends under pressure. For a moment, disaster seems near. The Persians push forward. Men stumble. Shields slip. The line strains. But on the wings, the Athenians and their allies press harder. They begin to fold inward, closing around the enemy like doors. What had seemed like weakness becomes movement. What had seemed like a breaking center becomes part of a larger pattern. And in war, as in civilization, patterns are often understood only after the danger has passed. Soon the Persians are driven back toward the marshes and the shore. Some flee to their ships, others fall where the land grows wet beneath their feet. The victorious do not yet know what they have preserved or what they have awakened. They only know that they are alive, that the impossible has happened, and that the sea is still full of enemy ships. Athens is not safe. Greece is not safe. The future remains uncertain. But something has changed in the minds of those who survived. They have seen that empire can bleed. As the sun climbs higher, the plain is covered with broken weapons, abandoned gear, and bodies that once carried entire private worlds within them. A Persian soldier who remembered gardens far to the east, an Athenian farmer who knew the shape of every tree near his home, a young man who had never before left his village, a veteran who had doubted that citizen soldiers could stand against imperial power. Victory does not erase grief. It only gives grief a meaning that later generations may try to understand. This is where we begin, not because Greece began here, but because here the stakes become visible. The world we are entering is not peaceful marble. It is restless earth. It is a world of ships drawn onto beaches, of bronze in dawnlight, of councils and kings, of hungry farmers and sacred festivals, of women weaving at the loom while men argue about honor, of slaves carrying water, of poets remembering heroes, of merchants watching the horizon, of philosophers asking questions dangerous enough to unsettle a city. And beneath it all lies a deeper mystery. How did this fractured land of mountains and islands give birth to ideas that still shape law, politics, science, art, drama, sport, history, and the very habit of questioning power? How did people so divided create a shared inheritance so enduring? How did beauty grow beside brutality, and reason beside myth? How did freedom become both a dream and a conflict? The battlefield grows quiet now. The cries fade, the dust settles. Men walk among the fallen, searching for friends, far off. Athens waits for news. The sea glitters softly under the morning sun, indifferent and eternal. The gods, if they are watching, give no answer, but history has moved. A door has opened, and through that door we step back into the long beginning. The Greek world is wider than any single city. To see it clearly, we must leave the battlefield and rise above the land, above the olive groves and broken shields, above the smoke of sacrifice and the voices of men calling one another by name. From above, Greece does not appear as a broad kingdom with easy roads and open plains. It appears as a shattered landscape, a country broken into stone, sea, island, gulf, mountain, valley, and glittering coast. It is a place where distance is not measured only in miles, but in cliffs, storms, passes, harbors, and the will of those who dare to cross them. Mountains divide everything. They rise in hard ridges, folding the land into pockets of human life. A valley may hold a village, a sanctuary, a field of barley, a cluster of goats, and a few families whose ancestors have known the same slope for generations. Beyond the ridge, another valley may speak the same language with a different accent, worship the same gods with a different ritual, and tell a different story about who they are. This is one of the first secrets of Greece. Its geography does not invite unity. It teaches separation. And yet the sea is everywhere. The Aegean spreads like a blue road between the islands. It is dangerous, but it is also generous. It carries fishermen, pirates, traders, colonists, soldiers, brides, exiles, priests, storytellers, and grain. It joins what the mountains divide. A man standing on a headland may see another island on the horizon, faint and pale under the morning sun, and know that beyond it lies another community, another harbor, another market, another shrine. The sea is a wall to the fearful and a passage to the bold. This is why Greek civilization never grows like a single tree. It grows like a constellation. Athens sits in Attica, near silver mines, dry fields, and harbors that open toward the Aegean. Sparta lies inland in Laconia, surrounded by mountains and supported by fertile land controlled through conquest. Corinth holds a powerful position on the narrow isthmus between central Greece and the Peloponnese, watching trade pass between seas. Thebes rises in Boeotia, wealthy in plains and horses, uneasy beneath the shadow of memory and rivalry. Argos, Megara, Eretria, Chalcis, Miletus, Ephesus, Syracuse, Massalia, Cyrene, and countless smaller communities form a world that is Greek, but never simple. Each city is called a polis. The word means more than a town. It means a body of citizens, a territory, a memory, a set of laws, a place of worship, a way of belonging. A polis may be large and ambitious, or small enough that most citizens know one another by face. It may be ruled by kings, aristocrats, tyrants, assemblies, councils, or some unstable mixture of all of these. It may honor Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hera, Poseidon, or a local hero whose grave still gathers offerings in the dark. To belong to a polis is to inherit protection and obligation, but the polis is also a seed of conflict. A Greek could feel at home among fellow Greeks at a festival, a sanctuary, or an athletic contest, and still be ready to march against them when borders, honor, trade, or revenge demanded it. This tension gives Greek history much of its energy. Shared identity and local pride pull against each other like two tides. The same people who gather at Olympia to honor Zeus may later meet with spears on a narrow field. The same language that carries poetry across the sea also carries insults, treaties, accusations, and declarations of war. Beyond mainland Greece, the world grows even larger. Across the Aegean, on the western coast of Anatolia, Greek cities look east toward powerful kingdoms and ancient empires. Miletus, with its harbors and thinkers, becomes one of the great gateways between Greek curiosity and the older civilizations of the Near East. Ephesus grows around its sanctuary and trade. Smyrna, Phocaea, Halicarnassus, and many others face a horizon crowded with opportunity and danger. These cities are Greek, but they live close to Lydia, Persia, Phrygia, Caria, and older traditions of wealth, kingship, and administration. Here, Greece learns from neighbors. It learns measures, patterns, luxuries, artistic forms, stories, and technologies. It adapts the alphabet from Phoenician traders and turns marks into a tool for poetry, law, accounts, inscriptions, dedications, and memory. It touches Egypt through trade and travel, and hears of temples older than Greek myth can comfortably measure. It meets the Levant through sailors and merchants. It encounters metals, dyes, grain, timber, ivory, spices, and strange customs carried through ports where many languages mingle under the cry of gulls. Still farther west, Greeks build new homes. They sail to Sicily, where rich soil and strategic harbors promise abundance. They settle in southern Italy, a region later remembered by Romans as Magna Graecia. Greater Greece. There, under a different sky, they raise temples whose columns stand with quiet power even after empires have passed. They found Syracuse, Tarentum, Croton, Sybaris, Neapolis, and other cities of trade, rivalry, and ambition. These colonies are not mere outposts. They are living extensions of the Greek world, often wealthy, proud, and dangerous. To the north, Greek ships enter the Black Sea. There, beyond the narrow straits, lie shores that feel remote and half mysterious to those raised beside the Aegean. Grain, fish, slaves, timber, and metals move through these routes. Colonies appear along coasts where Greeks meet Thracians, Scythians, and other peoples whose customs seem both fascinating and unsettling. A merchant from Athens might depend on grain from lands he has never seen. A pot made in one city might be buried in a grave far away, beside the body of someone who never spoke Greek. So the Greek world is not isolated. It breathes through exchange. Roads matter, but sea lanes matter more. Ships carry amphorae filled with wine and oil. They carry painted pottery, metalwork, textiles, timber, marble, grain, and human beings bought and sold in markets. They carry rumors of war, new gods, plague, political experiments, and songs that change as they travel. At a harbor, a sailor may hear news from Egypt, prices from Sicily, gossip from Corinth, and warnings about pirates near the Cyclades, all before the sun has reached its height. The distances are immense in human terms. A voyage from one island to another can be brief in calm weather and deadly when winds shift. A journey overland may require crossing passes where bandits wait or snow closes the way. News travels at the speed of a horse, a ship, a runner, or a rumor. A decision made in Sparta may take time to reach Athens. A revolt in Ionia may be misunderstood in mainland Greece until it is already too late. This delay gives the ancient world its peculiar suspense. Events happen before people know they are happening, and sacred places hold the scattered world together. Delphi clings to the slopes of Mount Parnassus, where Apollo's oracle speaks in words that men interpret with hope and fear. Olympia draws athletes, envoys, worshippers, and spectators from across the Greek world, offering a rare pause in violence under the gaze of Zeus. Delos shines in the Aegean as a holy island of Apollo and Artemis. Eleusis guards mysteries whispered through ritual and initiation. These sanctuaries are not only religious sites, they are meeting points, treasuries, stages of prestige, and archives of ambition carved in stone. At such places, Greeks see themselves among other Greeks. They hear familiar prayers spoken in unfamiliar accents. They watch rival cities dedicate statues, tripods, shields, and inscriptions that proclaim victory, gratitude, and wealth. They stand before offerings from communities they may never visit, and suddenly the scattered world becomes visible, not united, but recognizable, not peaceful, but connected. A man from a poor island, standing beneath the bright sky at Olympia, may understand that he belongs to something larger than his village, though not larger than his pride. Beneath this vastness lies a pattern. Greek civilization is born not from one capital, one dynasty, or one river valley, but from movement across difficult space. Its scale is not the scale of a compact empire. It is the scale of networks, harbors and shrines, colonies and markets, alliances and rivalries, ships and stories, mountains that isolate, seas that connect, and cities that compete so fiercely they sharpen one another into brilliance. For a while the world seems scattered beyond repair, but from this scattering comes energy. A farmer in Attica, a warrior in Sparta, a trader in Corinth, a philosopher in Miletus, a colonist in Sicily, and a priestess near Delphi all inhabit different versions of Greek life. They would not agree on what matters most. They would not always trust one another. Yet together, slowly and often unwillingly, they create a civilization whose borders are never fixed and whose influence travels farther than any city could command. The map is not a background, it is the engine of the story. Who were they? The question sounds simple only from far away. From a great distance, the Greeks appear as one people, gathered beneath a bright sky, speaking one language, worshipping familiar gods, building temples of white stone, and inventing words that later ages would treasure. But when we come closer, the picture begins to tremble. There is no single Greek kingdom at the beginning, no single throne, no single army, no single law that binds them all. There are communities scattered across coasts and valleys, each guarding its own stories, each looking at the others with kinship and suspicion. They called themselves Hellenes, yet even that name carries history inside it. To say Hellene was to claim a place within a shared world of language, ancestry, gods, customs, and memory. It was also to draw a line between oneself and those called barbaroi, people whose speech sounded foreign to Greek ears. But this line was never as solid as later storytellers imagined. Greeks traded with foreigners, married them, learned from them, hired them, feared them, admired them, and sometimes became like them in ways they did not want to admit. Identity was not a wall, it was a shore, constantly touched by incoming tides. Where did they come from? To answer, we must listen to both myth and earth. The Greeks told stories of ancestors born from gods, heroes, floods, stones, and wandering kings. They traced noble families to Heracles, Perseus, Helen, Achilles, Odysseus, and other figures who lived in the glowing distance between memory and imagination. These stories mattered. They gave families prestige, cities dignity, and landscapes a sacred biography. A rocky hill was not just a hill if a hero had once stood there. A spring was not just water if a nymph or god had touched it. But beneath the myths lay older movements of people. Long before Athens debated laws or Sparta trained warriors, waves of migration, settlement, mixing, and adaptation shaped the Aegean world. People moved through the Balkans, across islands, along coasts, and into valleys where earlier communities already lived. Languages shifted, pottery styles changed, burial customs altered, tools, weapons, animals, crops, and beliefs traveled in ways that no single legend can fully contain. Greek identity did not appear suddenly. It formed slowly, like sediment at the bottom of a harbor. This is one of the quiet truths of ancient civilization. Origins are rarely pure, they are layered. The Greeks inherited much from worlds older than classical Athens. The Minoans of Crete built palaces, stored goods, painted walls, honored rituals, and sailed through eastern Mediterranean networks. The Mycenaeans of mainland Greece raised fortified citadels, buried elites with gold, wrote records in an early form of Greek, and ruled palace territories through administration and violence. Then palace systems collapsed, writing disappeared for a time, population shifted, memories blurred. Out of loss came new forms, and from that darkness the later Greek world slowly emerged. How did they rise? Not by one conquest, not by one prophet, not by one city alone. Their rise came through many experiments carried out across many places. Villages grew into polis. Aristocrats competed for honor. Farmers demanded fairness. Soldiers learned the strength of standing shoulder to shoulder. Traders crossed seas. Poets gave shape to memory. Lawgivers wrote rules in public view. Sanctuaries gathered scattered communities. Colonists carried customs to foreign shores. Craftsmen refined stone, bronze, clay, and proportion. Thinkers began to ask whether the world could be understood by reason as well as reverence. But rise is a dangerous word. It can make history sound smooth, as if Greece climbed calmly toward greatness. The truth is rougher. Every advance carries conflict. The birth of citizenship also excludes many. The growth of wealth sharpens inequality. The courage of hoplite warfare depends on men who can afford armor, while poorer men labor on land or pull oars in warships. The beauty of temples rests on taxes, tribute, skilled labor, and sometimes imperial pressure. The songs of freedom are sung in societies that accept slavery as ordinary. This does not make the achievement unreal. It makes it human. Why did their world change? Because no living civilization stands still. Population grows. Land becomes scarce. Younger sons seek fortune abroad. Elites compete too fiercely. Tyrants rise, promising order. Citizens demand written laws. Armies change. Fleets grow. Persian power presses from the east. Trade brings wealth and anxiety. Plague can enter a crowded city. Silver can fund a navy. A single speech can turn a crowd. A failed harvest can weaken a state. A victory can give birth to arrogance. A defeat can teach a city to remember. Change often begins quietly. A farmer falls into debt. A noble family loses influence. A new weapon becomes common. A market expands near a harbor. A poet recites a story that gives old shame a new meaning. A sanctuary receives an offering from a city eager to be noticed. A boy learns letters carved from a script once used by traders from abroad. None of these events alone seems to overturn the world, but together, over generations, they alter what people believe is possible. The Greeks left behind ruins, certainly. Columns, theaters, walls, statues, inscriptions, coins, graves, and broken pottery lie scattered across the Mediterranean. Some stand under open sky. Some rest beneath museum glass. Some remain buried in soil, waiting for patient hands. These things speak in fragments. A cup tells us what people drank and how they decorated their evenings. A grave marker tells us who was loved or who wished to be remembered. A law inscription reveals a community trying to make order visible. A temple foundation shows where wealth, faith, and civic pride met in stone. But they left more than objects. They left habits of thought. They left questions that still disturb the mind. What is justice? Who should rule? What is courage? Can power be restrained by law? Is the world governed by gods, chance, nature, or reason? How should a person live? What does a community owe its citizens? What does beauty reveal? Why do proud cities destroy themselves? These questions did not belong only to philosophers seated in quiet rooms. They were lived in assembly spaces, courtrooms, battle lines, households, theaters, workshops, and streets. Their legacy is not simple admiration. It is inheritance and argument. To remember Greece honestly is not to kneel before perfection. It is to enter a world of brilliance and cruelty, freedom and exclusion, curiosity and pride, tenderness and violence. The same civilization that gives later ages tragedy also lives through tragedy. The same society that produces philosophy also condemns a philosopher. The same cities that praise moderation fall into devastating wars. The Greeks knew the gap between ideals and human conduct because they lived inside it. Perhaps this is why they remain so near. They are ancient, yet recognizable. Their world is full of people asking how to live together without destroying one another, how to honor the past without being trapped by it, how to build beauty in the presence of death, and how to seek truth while surrounded by rumor, ambition, fear, and desire. Their questions have not vanished. They have simply changed clothing. They still move quietly beneath modern courts, parliaments, universities, theaters, stadiums, museums, and conversations around power. So the great questions remain open as we move deeper. Who were they beneath the marble and myth? Where did they come from beneath the names they gave themselves? How did they rise from small communities into a force of memory, so lasting that later civilizations would build themselves in its shadow? Why did their world change, even at its brightest? And what did they leave behind, once the armies had marched away and the temples had fallen silent? For now, we hold these questions gently. They are not locks to be forced open. They are doors along a long corridor, and each door leads farther back into landscape. Migration, hunger, sea wind, family, fear, ambition, and worship. The Greece we think we know is waiting behind them, not still, not simple, alive with footsteps. To understand the Greeks, we must go back before Greece had fully named itself. Before the marble, there is stone. Before the city, there is weather. To understand ancient Greece, we must stand in a world older than the names of Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes. The land is already there, patient and severe, shaped by fire, sea, earthquake, and time. Mountains rise in ribs of limestone and granite. Valleys lie between them like hidden chambers. Rivers run, but few are broad enough to create the kind of vast, fertile plains that nourished Egypt or Mesopotamia. The soil is often thin. The sun is bright. The sea is near, even when unseen beyond the hills. This landscape does not simply surround the people. It instructs them. A family living in a narrow valley learns early that land is precious. Every terrace matters. Every olive tree has value. Every patch of barley must be guarded against drought, animals, debt, and war. The mountains make travel difficult, so communities turn inward, developing habits, loyalties, and rivalries of their own. Yet the same mountains push the eye outward. From a high ridge, one can often see the sea shining in the distance, and beyond it, another island, another coast, another possibility. The Greek world is born from this contradiction, isolation and movement, scarcity and imagination. The sea gives what the land withholds. Its waters are dangerous, especially in winter, when storms rise suddenly and small ships vanish. But in calmer seasons, the sea becomes a path. It offers fish, trade, contact, escape, and memory. The Aegean is not an empty blue surface. It is crowded with islands, stepping stones across the water. Crete, Euboea, Rhodes, Lesbos, Chios, Samos, Naxos, Paros, Delos, and countless smaller rocks and harbors make travel possible in stages, each horizon promising shelter or threat. Long before Greeks called themselves Hellenes, people moved across these waters. They carried obsidian from Melos, copper from Cyprus, ideas from Anatolia, grain from fertile lands, shells, pigments, tools, songs, and fears. In the Neolithic villages of the Aegean, people raised animals, planted crops, shaped clay, ground grain, and buried their dead with care. Their houses were not palaces, their names are lost, yet they made the first patient adjustments between human need and Greek terrain. They learned where water gathered, where fields could hold, where hills offered protection, and where paths descended to the shore. From these early communities, time flowed slowly. A child woke to the sound of goats outside a stone house. Smoke moved through a roof hole. Women and men worked grain with repeated motions known by the body before language explained them. The seasons ruled everything. Spring brought tender growth. Summer hardened the fields. Autumn carried olives, grapes, and the promise of oil and wine. Winter pressed people close to the hearth. The future was not measured in centuries, but in stored food, healthy animals, births, marriages, and the safe return of those who had gone to sea. And yet even here, change was approaching. Crete rose first into a world of remarkable complexity. The island sits like a long ship across the southern Aegean, facing Egypt, the Levant, Anatolia, and the Greek mainland. There, the civilization later called Minoan built palatial centers at Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros. These were not castles in the later medieval sense. They were administrative, ritual, storage, and ceremonial spaces filled with corridors, courtyards, magazines, painted walls, and signs of organized production. Grain, oil, wine, textiles, metals, and offerings moved through them like blood through a body. But the Minoan world keeps its secrets. Its writing, apart from later scripts, remains partly unread. Its art shows processions, animals, marine life, patterned clothing, ritual movement, and the famous image of bodies leaping near bulls. The palaces suggest authority, but the exact shape of that authority is still debated. Were kings seated behind painted walls, priestesses, councils, administrators? We see storage jars, seals, frescoes, staircases, workshops, and shrines. But we do not hear the voices clearly. The island glows with evidence and silence. Across the water, the mainland watched, traded, learned, and changed. In time, the Mycenaean world emerged. Its centers were harder, more fortified, more visibly martial. Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, Thebes, and other places rose behind thick walls. At Mycenae, massive stones formed gates and passages that later Greeks believed only giants could have moved. In grave circles, elites were buried with gold masks, weapons, cups, jewelry, and symbols of power. Here we feel a new social atmosphere, one of warrior aristocracy, palace administration, long-distance trade, and carefully measured wealth. The Mycenaeans spoke an early form of Greek. Their scribes used Linear B, a script adapted for palace records. On clay tablets, they did not write poetry or philosophy. They wrote lists, sheep, grain, oil, bronze, tripods, workers, offerings, chariot parts, land holdings. These tablets survived mostly because fire baked them during destruction. By accident, catastrophe preserved the paperwork of vanished kingdoms. It is a quiet irony. Flames that ended palaces also carried their daily concerns into the future. The world these tablets reveal is organized and watchful. Palace officials count resources, land is assigned, labor is tracked. Craftsmen produce goods, religious offerings are recorded, warriors and chariots are prepared. The landscape is no longer only village and field. It is territory under management. Authority has learned to write things down. The spoken command can fade, but a mark on clay can remain long enough to demand grain, oil, cloth, or service. Administration, once born, changes the texture of power. Still, even palaces depend on the land beneath them. The Mycenaean rulers did not escape geography. Their wealth rested on fields, herds, metals, crafts, trade, and control over routes. Their citadels guarded valleys and roads. Their ships moved across familiar waters, perhaps carrying warriors, merchants, envoys, and raiders. Their world touched Crete, Cyprus, Anatolia, Egypt, and the Levant. They inhabited a wider Late Bronze Age system, rich and fragile, where royal gifts, trade, diplomacy, piracy, and war crossed the sea together. Then came collapse, not one simple event, not one night of fire everywhere. The Late Bronze Age world unraveled in waves through destruction, migration, internal unrest, changing warfare, disruption of trade, climate stress, and political breakdown. Some palaces burned, some sites shrank. Writing disappeared from the Greek mainland. Populations moved. Networks weakened. The old administrative systems failed, and with them went the ability to organize life on the same scale. Later memory would transform parts of this age into heroic legend. But those who lived through it knew hunger, danger, and uncertainty. Imagine a road no longer guarded, a storeroom empty, a scribe with no palace to serve, a family leaving a settlement at dawn, carrying tools, children, and whatever seed they can protect. The world does not end in a single thunderclap. It frays. A route becomes unsafe. A market stops receiving ships. A chief can no longer reward followers. A sanctuary loses offerings. The next generation knows less than the last about how the old system worked. In time, memory becomes song, and song becomes myth. These centuries are sometimes called dark, but they were not empty. People still farmed, married, sailed, fought, worshipped, buried the dead, told stories, and adapted. Iron gradually became more important. Settlements shifted. Local leaders emerged. Communities became smaller, more flexible, and less dependent on palace bureaucracy. Without the heavy machinery of Bronze Age kingship, new forms of social life could slowly appear. Loss made space, though painfully, for reinvention. The land remained the teacher, mountains still divided, seas still connected, soil still demanded care, drought still threatened, the dead still required honor, the gods still needed names, even as names changed. In this long passage from palace to palace, the Greeks were shaped by everything that had come before them and by everything that had vanished. They inherited ruins without always understanding them. They inherited stories of golden kings, great walls, distant wars, and heroes stronger than ordinary men. By the time Greek civilization begins to rise again into clearer light, it carries deep memory in its bones. It remembers palaces as legend. It remembers hardship as discipline. It remembers the sea as road and danger. From climate, migration, collapse, and survival came a people restless enough to sail outward, proud enough to defend small homelands, and curious enough to ask what lay beneath the surface of things. Greece did not begin in marble calm. It began in broken terrain, salt wind, hunger, adaptation, and the long human effort to make meaning where certainty had disappeared. The world had shaped them first. Only later would they shape the world. Far from the palaces and later monuments, Greek life begins at the hearth. It begins in the dim interior of a house where smoke rises gently from a small fire, where clay vessels stand near the wall, where baskets hold grain, wool, figs, or dried herbs, and where the day's first light enters through a doorway facing a narrow lane. Before Greece becomes a world of famous cities, it is a world of households. Before citizens gather in assemblies, families gather around food. Before philosophers ask what justice is, parents, children, servants, kin, and neighbors learn justice in the daily sharing of labor, water, bread, and protection. The household is called the oikos. It is more than a building. It is family, property, land, animals, tools, ancestors, obligations, and future hope bound together under one fragile roof. A household may be modest, with a few rooms, a courtyard, a loom, storage jars, and sleeping places arranged with practical care. A wealthier one may hold more land, more animals, more dependents, and more goods brought from trade. But everywhere, the oikos is the first world a Greek child knows. It is the place where identity is warmed, disciplined, fed, and named. Outside, the land waits. Most people are tied to agriculture, even when later stories prefer soldiers, poets, and statesmen. Fields must be cleared of stones, barley and wheat must be sown, vines must be pruned, olives must be tended across long years before they reward patience with oil. Goats and sheep move over hillsides, cropping sparse grass, watched by boys or hired herdsmen beneath the changing sky. A harvest can bring relief, a drought can bring fear. A bad season is never only weather. It is hunger moving slowly toward the door. Food is simple but not without meaning. Bread, porridge, olives, onions, cheese, figs, lentils, beans, fish, wine mixed with water, and oil form the ordinary rhythm of survival. Meat is less common, often tied to sacrifice, feasting, or wealth. When an animal is offered to the gods, the smoke carries devotion upward, while cooked portions return to human mouths below. In this exchange, religion and appetite meet. The divine is not distant from daily life. It rises with the smell of fat on fire, with the crackle of wood, with prayers spoken by people who need rain, health, fertility, and safe returns. Every tool has a story of hands. The plow scratches the soil, the sickle gathers grain, the loom stretches threads into cloth, the grinding stone wears slowly beneath repeated pressure. Clay is shaped, fired, painted, traded, broken, and sometimes buried. Metalworkers hammer bronze and iron into knives, pins, weapons, and fittings. Carpenters shape wood for carts, doors, beds, ships, and beams. None of this labor is decorative to life. It is life itself, repeated daily, quietly, with skill learned through imitation rather than written instruction. And much of this world is carried by women. Inside courtyards and rooms, women manage food stores, weave cloth, raise children, supervise servants, prepare offerings, mourn the dead, and sustain household continuity across generations. Their legal and public rights vary by city and period, but their labor is everywhere essential. A house without women's work is a house collapsing into disorder. The loom, often mentioned in poetry, is not merely a symbol of patience or virtue. It is an economic machine, a maker of clothing, value, status, and survival. Yet the household is not sealed from danger. Debt can enter it, war can empty it, disease can silence it, marriage can strengthen alliances or expose vulnerability. A daughter may leave one oikos to join another, carrying with her expectation, fear, and family strategy. A son may inherit land too small to support him. A slave may live within the same walls while never belonging in the same way. Beneath the image of domestic order lies a harder truth. Ancient households are places of affection, discipline, hierarchy, dependence, and unequal power. Still, tenderness survives there. A mother washes a child's hair. An old man warms his hands near the fire. A bride touches the doorpost of a new home. A family places small offerings for ancestors whose names remain known only in whispers. A child learns the stories of gods before learning the boundaries of the fields. In these moments, early Greek society becomes visible not as marble achievement, but as breathing human continuity. The great temples of later centuries stand upon such small acts. The dead remain close. Burial customs vary across time and region, but care for the dead is one of the most enduring signs of community. A body is washed, dressed, mourned, carried, buried, or cremated according to local practice and era. Grave goods may accompany the deceased, modest or splendid, depending on status and belief. Vessels, weapons, jewelry, tools, ornaments, or simple markers can speak of identity and grief. The funeral is not only farewell, it is a public statement that the dead belonged, and that the living remember their obligations. Mourning has sound. Women cry out, sing laments, tear at hair, and give grief a shape the community can recognize. Men stand nearby, silent or controlled, guarding honor in the face of loss. The dead must be treated properly, because improper burial threatens more than emotion. It unsettles the moral order. Later, Greek tragedy will return again and again to this fear. The fear that a body left dishonored can poison a family, a city, even a king's claim to justice. The grave is small, but the question is immense. Who is owed remembrance? Across villages and early settlements, identity forms through kinship and exchange. Families know which lineages matter, which marriages bind households, which feuds still ache beneath polite words, which fields have been disputed, which shrine receives offerings at planting time. A person's name carries a father, a house, a place, a set of expectations. To belong is not an abstract idea. It means being recognized at the well, at the field boundary, at the festival, at the funeral, and in the stories told after dark. Trade widens the circle. A pot from one region appears in another. A metal tool arrives from far away. Amber, ivory, spices, dyes, or fine objects pass through many hands before reaching a Greek household or sanctuary. Most people do not travel far, but objects travel for them. A cup on a shelf may carry the memory of a distant port. A pattern on cloth may imitate a foreign design. A sailor's tale may bring news of cities beyond the horizon, where people eat differently, pray differently, dress differently, and yet desire many of the same things. Markets become places of exchange and encounter. There are voices, animals, bargaining, suspicion, laughter, dust, and the smell of fish, oil, leather, and fruit. A farmer may trade surplus for pottery. A craftsman may sell a finely shaped vessel. A merchant may speak of storms near the islands, of political unrest in another city, of a festival worth visiting, or of pirates seen along a route. Information moves with goods. Curiosity travels beside necessity. Even before formal philosophy, the Greek world is being taught by contact. Ritual gives rhythm to the year. There are sacrifices before planting, offerings after harvest, rites for childbirth, marriage, initiation, purification, and death. Small shrines mark roadsides, springs, hilltops, homes, and boundaries. Gods are not confined to grand temples. They appear in household hearths, sacred groves, caves, doorways, and moments of uncertainty. Hestia guards the hearth. Demeter watches grain. Dionysus touches vine, ecstasy, and disruption. Athena protects skill and cities. Apollo brings light. Music, prophecy, and sudden plague. The gods are powerful because they are everywhere. But religion is not only fear, it is celebration. Festivals gather scattered people into shared time. There is music, procession, dance, food, competition, sacrifice, and public memory. Young people see and are seen. Old stories are renewed. A community displays itself to itself. Even a small settlement can feel, for a day, joined to the order of gods and ancestors. Yet festivals can also reveal rank: who leads the procession, who pays for offerings, who receives the best portion, who stands near the altar. Sacred order and social order often reflect each other. In these early communities, identity is made slowly. It is made by work repeated across seasons, by meals shared, by dead buried, by gods honored, by marriages arranged, by debts remembered, by songs learned, by tools passed from hand to hand, and by land defended against need. No single moment creates Greek society. It gathers, grain by grain, like wheat in a storage jar. And in that slow gathering, something essential takes form. A people learns to belong before it learns to rule. The later Greek city will argue about law, citizenship, war, virtue, beauty, and truth. But underneath those arguments lies this older foundation of hearth smoke, rough bread, worn tools, woven cloth, sacred graves, and human voices speaking in courtyards at dusk. Civilization does not begin with marble columns. It begins when ordinary people decide that memory, labor, land, and the dead must be held together. For a while the world is small, but within that smallness, power is already beginning to stir. Power begins quietly. It does not first appear as a throne glittering in a palace hall. It appears when one household has more land than another, when one family can call more men to a quarrel, when one warrior owns better weapons, when one elder remembers older agreements, when one priest knows the proper words for sacrifice, and when one place becomes the center where others must gather. Authority grows from habit before it becomes law. It gathers in gestures, in gifts, in debts, in fear, and in the need for someone to decide when danger comes. In the early Greek world, leadership is personal before it is institutional. A strong man may lead because he can protect cattle, settle disputes, reward followers, and speak persuasively at a feast. A family may dominate because its ancestors are honored, its fields are broad, its marriages are strategic, and its sons are skilled in war. Wealth takes visible form in horses, weapons, bronze, fine vessels, imported goods, and the ability to host others generously. A feast is never only a meal. It is a theater of rank, where meat, wine, seating, speech, and gifts reveal who stands above whom. Yet power must be justified. A leader cannot merely take. He must persuade people that his authority belongs within the order of gods and ancestors. He offers sacrifices. He protects sanctuaries. He claims descent from heroes. He listens to omens. He honors the dead. He appears as guardian of custom, not only as master of force. In a world where memory matters deeply, the past becomes a tool of rule. To command the present, one must often speak in the voice of ancient obligation. But communities are changing. Villages grow larger. Settlements gather around defensible hills. Fields stretch outward. Trade increases. Iron tools become common. Population rises in some regions, and pressure on land sharpens old tensions. People need clearer rules for inheritance, boundaries, debts, marriage, compensation, and violence. A feud that once involved two families may now threaten a whole community. Revenge can spiral. Pride can burn for generations. Slowly, the need for order becomes greater than the comfort of old improvisation. The polis begins to take shape. At first, it is not a clean invention. It is a gathering of older elements into something new. A fortified height, the Acropolis, offers refuge and sacred focus. A lower gathering place begins to serve as market, meeting ground, and public space. Temples and altars mark the favor of the gods. Walls may enclose the settlement, or at least define what must be defended. Around the city lie fields, villages, roads, graves, pastures, and boundaries that give the community its body. The city is more than buildings. It is a shared decision to belong under common protection and common danger. Those who belong may not be equal, but they are increasingly tied to a public identity larger than kin. The old household does not disappear. It remains powerful, intimate, and necessary. Yet above the household rises another claim. The polis asks men to fight, pay, judge, worship, remember, and sometimes die not only for family, but for the city itself. This is a profound change. It means power can no longer belong only to private households. It must pass through public forms. Councils of elders appear. Aristocratic families gather to deliberate. Assemblies of armed men may approve decisions, shout assent, or resist. Magistrates take on defined duties. Priests and priestesses keep sacred rites. Heralds announce decisions. Judges or respected mediators settle disputes. No city follows exactly the same path, but across the Greek world, authority begins to harden into offices, customs, and procedures. Still, the elite remain powerful. They control land. They breed horses. They dominate warfare in older aristocratic forms. They commission fine objects. They trace genealogies to heroes. They compete through athletic victories, dedications at sanctuaries, marriages, funerals, and public generosity. Their houses are nodes of influence. Their rivalries can make cities unstable. Two noble families may compete for generations, drawing supporters into factional conflict until civic life itself trembles beneath inherited pride. Beneath this surface of order, anger grows. Small farmers can fall into debt. Poorer citizens may feel excluded from justice. A man who fights for the city may ask why he has no voice in its decisions. A neighbor who sees aristocrats settling disputes in their own favor may begin to wonder whether custom is justice or only power wearing an old cloak? These questions do not yet sound like philosophy. They sound like bitterness at the boundary stone, frustration in the market, and fear at the moment a debt comes due. Writing changes the atmosphere. When laws are remembered only by elites, law can seem like a private possession. But when laws are written down and displayed, they become visible, not necessarily fair, not necessarily democratic, but visible. A written law stands before the community like a challenge. It says that rule is no longer only memory in the mouths of powerful men. It can be seen, recited, argued over, and preserved. The mark on stone or wood begins to restrain the voice that once claimed exclusive knowledge. This does not end conflict. It gives conflict a new language. In some cities, lawgivers emerge, figures entrusted to organize customs, reduce feuds, regulate punishment, and stabilize a community close to crisis. Their work is often severe. Early law can be harsh, even brutal, because it seeks to replace private revenge with public penalty. The city claims the right to judge injury, theft, murder, debt, and insult. In doing so, it takes a piece of power away from the family and gives it to the public order. This is one of civilization's difficult bargains. Fortifications tell another part of the story. A wall is stone, but it is also a confession. It admits danger. It says that the world outside cannot be trusted. It requires labor, planning, leadership, and shared fear. To build a wall, a community must organize bodies, materials, time, and purpose. Gates must be guarded, towers watched, repairs maintained. The wall becomes a boundary between those inside and those outside, between citizen and stranger, between safety and uncertainty. Temples also gather power. A sanctuary is not only a place of prayer, it is a treasury, a political stage, a marker of identity, and a meeting ground between human ambition and divine authority. Cities pour wealth into shrines because the gods must be honored, but also because public beauty announces strength. A temple says, "We are favored, we are organized, we remember." We can command labor and stone. We can make permanence visible. Taxes and contributions follow. Someone must fund walls, sacrifices, ships, roads, festivals, officials, and war. Some cities depend on land revenues. Others use tribute, customs duties, fines, liturgies, or emergency levies. However it is gathered, public wealth changes political life. Once resources flow into common projects, the question becomes unavoidable. Who controls them? Who accounts for them? Who benefits behind every noble speech about honor? And the gods lies the practical matter of grain, silver, timber, bronze, labor, and time. War accelerates organization. The rise of hoplite warfare gives new importance to citizens who can afford armor and stand in the phalanx. These men are not kings, but they are not powerless either. They train, fight, and risk death beside their neighbors. In the heavy press of shields, a farmer may feel the physical truth of civic dependence. One man's courage protects the man beside him. One man's panic can endanger the line. Military formation becomes a lesson in political imagination. Order is shared, or it fails. And so authority widens, but unevenly. Women remain mostly outside formal political decision-making, though their religious roles can be vital and their household authority essential. Slaves labor within systems that speak proudly of freedom. Foreign residents may enrich a city while lacking full belonging. Poor citizens may gain voice slowly, or not at all. The polis is an extraordinary creation, but it is not a realm of universal equality. It is a contested structure, built by inclusion and exclusion at the same time. This tension gives Greek history its pulse. Power must be strong enough to defend the city, but not so strong that it becomes tyranny. Elites must lead, but not devour the community. Laws must restrain violence, but not freeze injustice forever. Gods must be honored, but human decisions must still be made in dusty meeting places by men with interests, fears, grudges, and hopes. The Greek city is born from these pressures, never fully at peace with itself. For a while the system holds through balance. Councils advise, assemblies shout, magistrates serve, priests sacrifice, warriors drill, farmers harvest, craftsmen work, merchants bargain, families arrange marriages, poets sing of heroes whose glory seems both inspiring and dangerous. In every city, old aristocratic pride meets new civic necessity. Something is forming that no palace king of the Bronze Age would have fully understood. A public world is being born. It is still narrow, still fierce, still haunted by inequality and violence, but it is public. Decisions are moving into shared spaces. Laws are becoming visible. Citizens are learning that power can be argued over, not merely inherited. The city is becoming a thing one can serve, criticize, fear, love, and betray. From hearth and field, Greece has moved toward walls, councils, sanctuaries, and law. But order remains fragile. When debt deepens, when elites quarrel, when poorer citizens lose hope, when ambitious men discover that public anger can be ridden like a horse, the city trembles again. The first structures of authority do not end the struggle for justice. They make that struggle impossible to ignore. And in one city, beneath the dry Attic sky, that struggle will soon demand a lawgiver. In Athens, the soil itself seems to remember debt. The city is not yet the radiant center later generations imagine. It is a troubled place of farms, shrines, noble households, rocky hills, and anxious citizens who look at one another with suspicion. Beyond the settlement, Attica spreads in dry ridges and narrow fields. Beautiful but demanding, olive trees cling to the earth. Barley grows where it can. Rain is never guaranteed. A family may work the same land for generations and still live one bad harvest away from desperation. Debt markers stand in the fields. They are silent stones, but their meaning is sharp. They declare that a farmer's land is no longer fully his own, that obligation has entered the soil, that a creditor's claim reaches into the harvest. If the debt cannot be paid, the danger may pass from field to body. Men can fall into dependency. Families can be broken. In the worst cases, Athenians can lose freedom and be sold away from the land that gave them their name. This is not only poverty, it is humiliation made visible. A city cannot endure this forever. The aristocrats, the eupatrids, hold prestige, land, and authority. They remember noble ancestors. They control much of public life. They settle disputes, dominate offices, and guard old privileges beneath the language of tradition. Yet below them, anger grows among small farmers, laborers, and those whose place in the city feels increasingly insecure. The poor do not merely envy the rich. They fear losing themselves. They fear becoming strangers in their own homeland. Athens stands near rupture. Civil strife is not an abstract danger. It is a shadow at the edge of every assembly. every market conversation, every boundary dispute, every funeral for a man who died with obligations unpaid. The city needs change, but change can destroy the men who demand it. It needs authority, but authority is mistrusted. It needs justice, but each faction has its own definition of justice. In such a moment, a single person may be asked to carry an impossible burden. That person is Solon. He comes from noble birth, but he is not remembered as a simple defender of nobles. He is a poet, a traveler, a man shaped by commerce, reputation, and reflection. In his verses, we hear a mind trying to understand disorder before disorder consumes the city. Solon does not speak like a man who believes society can be purified by anger alone. He sees greed among the powerful. He sees resentment among the poor. He sees that Athens is being pulled apart by appetite, fear, and imbalance. His task is not to please everyone. It is to save the city. Around the early 6th century before Christ, Solon is given extraordinary authority to reform Athenian law and society. The exact details have been shaped by later memory, but the central crisis remains clear. Athens needs release. The poor need protection from crushing debt. The elite need reassurance that reform will not become revenge. The city needs a structure stronger than private anger. Solon steps into that narrow space where every decision creates enemies. His most famous act is remembered as the shaking off of burdens. The phrase is almost physical. One imagines a man straightening his back after years beneath a load. Debt markers are removed from fields. Those enslaved for debt are freed. Athenians sold abroad are brought back when possible. The body of the citizen is no longer to be collateral in the old way. This reform does not make everyone equal. It does not end poverty. It does not erase hierarchy. But it draws a line, and the line matters. A citizen should not vanish into bondage because hunger and debt have trapped his household. For those who suffered, it must have felt like air. For creditors, it may have felt like theft. This is the nature of reform in a divided society. The same act can appear as justice to one man and disaster to another. Solon understands this. He does not pretend that law can make pain disappear. He tries instead to prevent pain from becoming civil war. He refuses to seize wealth and redistribute land in the way the poorest may have desired. He refuses also to leave the old order untouched. He stands between extremes, and because of that, both extremes can accuse him. But Solon's work reaches beyond debt. He reorganizes political privilege according to wealth classes, giving broader participation to some while preserving higher offices for the richer. This is not democracy in its later form. It is a graded system, cautious and unequal, but it weakens the monopoly of birth. Wealth, not lineage alone, becomes a measure of political role. The city begins to imagine itself less as the possession of noble families and more as an ordered community with defined responsibilities. He also strengthens public justice. Citizens gain greater access to appeal and legal process. The idea that a wrong done to one person can concern the wider community begins to take firmer shape. Law moves another step away from private vengeance and elite discretion. In time, Athenians will become famous for their courts, arguments, juries, accusations, and legal imagination. Solon does not create that later world fully formed, but he opens a door through which it can pass. Yet the door opens onto uncertainty. Laws carved or displayed in public do not change human nature overnight. Ambition remains, rival families remain, poor soil remains, pride remains. Athens is still vulnerable to men who promise order by concentrating power in their own hands. A lawgiver can restrain a city, but he cannot erase the hunger for dominance. Solon knows this deeply. His poems warn against excess, greed, and the destruction that comes when citizens place private gain above the common good. There is something lonely in his position. He has enough power to be feared, but not enough to control what people will do after him. He gives laws, then leaves Athens for a time, according to tradition, so that citizens cannot pressure him to change them immediately. Whether every detail of that story is exact matters less than its meaning. A true lawgiver must resist becoming a tyrant. He must create an order that can stand without his daily command. That is a fragile and noble ambition. For a while Athens breathes. The burdens have been shaken. The city has not collapsed. The fields no longer carry the same public signs of debt bondage. Men who might have been lost to slavery can stand again within the civic body. The aristocrats still possess wealth, but they cannot pretend that nothing has changed. The poor have not received all they wanted, but they have seen that the city can be forced to answer suffering with law, and yet peace is incomplete. Factions return, regional rivalries sharpen, ambitious leaders gather followers. The old struggle between noble houses and common citizens does not vanish, because no reform can remove all causes of conflict. Solon's Athens remains a city in motion, not a finished design. Later, tyranny will rise under Pisistratus, and later still, deeper democratic reforms will transform the city again. But Solon's memory endures because he represents a turning point in political imagination. He shows that law can intervene between power and desperation. He shows that citizenship can have a protected meaning. He shows that a city is not merely the inheritance of the strong, but a shared structure that must be repaired when it begins to break. This idea is quiet at first. It does not arrive with trumpets. It arrives in removed stones, revised obligations, public rules, and the uneasy recognition that justice must be more than the advantage of those who already rule. In the evening, imagine an Athenian farmer standing in his field. The air cools, the cicadas soften, the earth is still poor, still difficult, still dependent on weather and labor. But the marker that once declared his burden is gone. His children move near the doorway of the house. Smoke rises from the hearth. He is not rich. He is not powerful. He may never speak beautifully in an assembly. Yet something has shifted around him. The city has acknowledged that his freedom matters. This is how civilizations change, not only through battles, temples, and philosophers, but through the moment when a community decides that old suffering has become too dangerous to ignore. Solon does not perfect Athens, he steadies it. He gives it a language of reform, restraint, and civic responsibility. And beneath the dry Attic sky, that language begins to prepare the city for a larger test. For justice, once spoken aloud, does not remain still. Before dawn at Marathon, the world holds its breath again. The plain lies low and open beside the sea, bordered by hills, marsh, and distant farmland. In the half-light, the Persian camp is beginning to stir. Ships rest near the shore, their hulls dark against the water. Fires burn low. Horses shift and stamp. Men from many lands wake beneath the command of an empire that stretches far beyond the horizon of any Athenian farmer. They have crossed the Aegean not for trade, not for festival, not for diplomacy, but to punish and to compel. Athens has defied the great king. That defiance has not come from innocence. Greek cities in Ionia, across the sea on the coast of Asia Minor, had risen against Persian rule, and Athens had given them aid. The revolt had burned bright and then failed. Empires remember such things. Now Persian power has arrived in Attica, and the Athenians understand that this is more than a raid. If they are defeated, their city may be forced back under tyranny, their political experiment broken, their homes exposed, their families at the mercy of men who do not need to hate them personally in order to destroy their freedom. The army that gathers to meet Persia is small by comparison. It is mostly Athenian, joined by loyal Plataeans, men from a smaller city whose courage will not be forgotten. The Spartans have been asked for help, but religious timing delays their arrival. So Athens stands almost alone. This matters. In later memory, Marathon becomes a symbol of Greek courage, but in the moment itself, it must have felt dangerously uncertain. A citizen soldier could look across the plain and see not an idea, but the visible weight of imperial force. There are no marble certainties here, only choices. The commanders debate. Should they attack? Should they wait? Should they withdraw closer to Athens? Every option carries danger. Delay may allow Persian cavalry to move, or the fleet to sail toward the undefended city. An attack across open ground risks destruction beneath arrows. The Athenians are not professional soldiers in the imperial sense. They are farmers, landholders, citizens, men whose armor marks their status and whose lives are rooted in the soil behind them. Yet they also know the phalanx, the hard discipline of shields beside shields. Miltiades urges action. He is experienced, forceful, and familiar with Persian ways from earlier life in the northern Aegean. He understands that hesitation can become defeat before the first spear is thrown. To attack such a force seems reckless, but the moment demands a dangerous clarity. The Athenians cannot defeat Persia by becoming Persia. They must use what they have: heavy infantry, local knowledge, speed, cohesion, a line of citizens willing to close distance before arrows and fear can break them. Then the signal comes. The Greeks advance. At first, the movement is orderly, the line stretching across the plain, thin in the center and stronger on the wings. Each man carries weight: shield, spear, helmet, cuirass, greaves, fear, memory. The Persians watch them come. Perhaps there is surprise, perhaps contempt. These men have no cavalry screen, no massive imperial depth, no overwhelming numbers. They are running toward the machinery of empire with bronze, leather, muscle, and a fierce attachment to their city. The arrows rise. For a few heartbeats, the sky itself becomes hostile. The first shafts strike shields, helmets, earth, flesh. Men stumble, others keep moving. A phalanx survives only if the line survives. The shield protects not merely the man who carries it, but the man beside him. This is a political truth expressed through the body. In the press of battle, freedom is not solitude. It is dependence, accepted under danger. The collision is brutal. Greek spears drive into Persian ranks. Persian fighters answer with blades, axes, bows, shields, and courage of their own. The Persians are not shadows in a Greek story. They are men from living places, bound by duty, reward, fear, and loyalty. They have families, languages, gods, songs, and memories. They do not vanish because later generations need them to symbolize empire. On the plain, they resist, they bleed, they kill. The battle is human before it is legendary. The Greek center bends. This is the dangerous instant. If the center breaks too quickly, the army may be cut apart. Dust thickens. Men shout through bronze helmets. Commands are hard to hear. The Persians press forward where the Greek line is thinner. For a moment, victory seems to lean toward the invaders, but on the wings, the Athenians and Plataeans gain ground. Their stronger flanks push through, then turn inward. The shape of the battle changes like a door closing. Now the Persians are caught. Momentum shifts. What had seemed like Greek weakness becomes a trap of circumstance and discipline. The wings close. The imperial line strains. Men begin to fall back toward the shore, toward marsh and ships, toward the promise of escape. Panic may begin in small pockets, with one man stepping backward, then another, then a group. In battle, fear moves faster than speech. Soon retreat becomes movement, and movement becomes flight. The shore turns chaotic. Men scramble for ships. Greeks press after them, trying to seize or burn vessels before they can launch. Some Persians fall in the marshes, some reach the decks, some die at the waterline. The sea that carried empire to Attica now carries survivors away. It is not the end of Persian ambition. It is not the end of danger, but it is the end of one expectation, the expectation that a great empire must naturally crush a small city. The Athenians have won. The dead are counted. The living are stunned. Victory brings relief, but not rest. The Persian fleet may still sail around Cape Sunion and strike at Athens while the army is exhausted and far from home. So the Athenians march back quickly, bodies aching, minds sharpened by the knowledge that victory in one place can be undone by delay in another. Their city waits, and the city is everything, not an abstraction. Walls, shrines, houses, wives, children, old parents, workshops, graves, and the smoky breathing of the hearth. When the Persians see Athens defended, they withdraw. For now, that phrase matters. For now, Marathon does not end the Persian wars. Larger storms will come. Xerxes will gather a greater invasion. Thermopylae, Salamis, and Plataea still wait in the long corridor of time. But Marathon changes the inner weather of the Greek world. It gives Athens a memory powerful enough to shape identity. It teaches citizens that they have stood alone and survived. It gives later speakers, generals, poets, and politicians a sacred example to invoke whenever courage needs ancestry. Yet the victory also carries danger. Success can become pride. Memory can become fuel for ambition. The city that sees itself as defender of Greek freedom may later ask other cities to accept its leadership, then its pressure, then its tribute. A battle fought to preserve autonomy may become part of the story by which Athens justifies empire. This is one of history's quiet ironies. Triumph does not remain pure once power learns to use it. Still, on the burial mound at Marathon, another feeling endures. The fallen are honored where they died. Their names belong to the city's memory, but their bodies belong to the earth of the plain. Families mourn them not as symbols, but as sons, husbands, brothers, fathers, friends. A victory monument cannot restore a voice at the doorway. Public glory and private grief lie beside each other, inseparable. Greece will return to this tension again and again in tragedy, history, and political speech. The turning point is not only military, it is imaginative. After Marathon, the Athenians can believe that citizens, organized by law and shared danger, can face forces vastly larger than themselves. The Greeks can begin to imagine that their divided world contains something worth defending together, even if unity remains fragile. The small Poly, so quarrelsome and imperfect, has revealed an unexpected strength. It has shown that political belonging can harden into battlefield courage. The plain grows quiet once more. Wind moves through grass where men once ran. The marsh reflects the sky. The sea continues its old motion, indifferent to victory and defeat. But beneath the silence, history has quickened. The Greeks have learned that they are not merely heirs of old stories. They can create stories of their own. And once a people believes that, everything begins to move faster. After Marathon, momentum gathers like wind over open water. The Greek world does not suddenly become united, peaceful, or secure. Old rivalries remain. Athens still mistrusts Aegina. Sparta still watches the Peloponnese with stern attention. Corinth guards its trade. The island cities calculate advantage. The Ionians remember Persian power more closely than mainland Greeks can easily understand. Yet beneath the familiar disputes, something has changed. The scale of possibility has widened. A city that once thought mostly of fields, harbors, borders, and neighboring enemies now understands that its fate may be tied to a world far larger than itself. Power begins to move through systems. Ships become as important as shields. Silver becomes strategy. Laws become instruments of mobilization. Alliances become webs of obligation. The sea, always present in Greek life, now becomes a theater of survival and ambition. Athens turns increasingly toward its harbors, especially Piraeus, where wooden hulls, rope, pitch, bronze fittings, and human labor begin to shape a new kind of strength. A navy is not built by courage alone. It requires money, timber, planning, training, command, maintenance, and men willing to row in disciplined rhythm until their bodies ache. The discovery and exploitation of silver at Lorien matters deeply. Silver can become coin. Coin can become wages. Wages can become ships. Ships can become power. A debate over wealth becomes a debate over destiny. Some may wish to divide profits among citizens. Others see danger approaching and argue that the city must prepare. Themistocles, cunning and persuasive, helps turn Athenian attention toward naval expansion. His vision is practical, ambitious, and unsettling. A city of farmers and hoplites must learn to think like a sea power. A trireme is a machine of wood and breath. 3 banks of rowers pull oars in coordinated motion, guided by rhythm and command. The ship is long, fast, fragile, and dangerous. Its bronze ram turns motion into violence. Its success depends not only on the elite who can afford armor, but on poorer citizens who row. This changes political imagination. Men who power the fleet may begin to ask why their arms matter in battle, but their voices should not matter in the city. Naval strength quietly broadens the meaning of citizenship. Then Persia comes again. This time the invasion is immense, led by Xerxes, son of Darius, carrying imperial authority across bridges, roads, and seas. Greek memory will make the numbers vast beyond easy belief. But the fear was real enough without exaggeration. Cities must choose: resist, submit, wait, betray, calculate, or pray. Some Greeks join Persia, some remain neutral, Some resist with desperate resolve. The Greek world is not a single heroic body. It is a field of decisions, some noble, some fearful, some practical, and some shaped by old hatred of neighboring cities more than by love of freedom. At Thermopylae, a narrow pass becomes a legend. Spartans, Thespians, Thebans, and others stand against the Persian advance. King Leonidas and his men do not stop the invasion forever, but they transform delay into memory. The pass, the hot springs, the cliffs, the pressure of numbers, and the final encirclement become part of Greece's moral landscape. Yet while land armies struggle, the real turning point gathers at sea. Themistocles understands that Athens cannot be saved by walls alone. Its people must be moved. Its fleet must fight where numbers can be narrowed. Athens is evacuated. Imagine that silence. Doors closed, hearths abandoned, old people carried or guided away, sacred objects removed, women and children ferried to safety. Men look back at roofs, shrines, workshops, graves, and streets where their lives had unfolded. To save the city, they must leave the city. This is one of the most painful forms of strategy. The Persians enter Athens and burn the Acropolis. Smoke rises where memory lives. The city is wounded, but not ended, because its people and fleet still survive. At Salamis, the sea tightens. The straits are narrow, crowded, and treacherous. The Persian fleet, larger and more complex, cannot use its full strength easily. Greek ships wait with knowledge of local waters and desperate purpose. Oars dip. Commanders shout. Bronze rams strike hulls. Men drown inside the broken architecture of naval war. The battle is confusion, splintered timber, cries, foam, and sudden reversals. In that confined water, Greek resistance becomes more than a battlefield event. It becomes a system proving itself. The victory at Salamis does not end everything, but it breaks the rhythm of invasion. The following year, at Plataea and Mycale, Persian power is pushed back further. The Greek cities that resisted can breathe again, but survival creates a new problem. Who will lead now? Who will guard the Aegean? Who will protect the cities of Ionia? Who will command fleets, collect contributions, punish defectors, and decide what common defense requires? The war against Persia does not only preserve Greek freedom, it forces Greek communities to invent larger structures of cooperation, and those structures carry danger inside them. The Delian League begins as an alliance. Its treasury is placed on sacred Delos. Member cities contribute ships or money for the continuing struggle against Persia. Athens leads because Athens has ships, energy, prestige, and ambition. At first, leadership can be presented as service. The sea must be protected, Persian garrisons must be removed, pirates must be suppressed, trade routes must be secured. But over time, voluntary contribution hardens into obligation. Allies become subjects in all but name. Tribute replaces shared purpose. The treasury eventually moves to Athens, and the meaning of the alliance changes. This is how empire can grow from defense, not always through a single declaration, often through administration, a payment required here, a revolt suppressed there, a garrison installed, a decree passed, a court case transferred, a coinage standard imposed, a city told that its ships are no longer needed, only its silver. Each act may be justified by security, efficiency, or common interest, yet together they create dependency. Athens, which once feared domination, begins to dominate. The system is powerful because it is practical. Tribute funds fleets. Fleets protect routes. Protected routes enrich trade. Wealth supports building, festivals, wages, public works, and naval readiness. The city becomes a center through which money, art, labor, politics, and ambition flow. Inscriptions record payments. Officials assess contributions. Messengers carry orders. Ships enforce decisions. Courts hear disputes. Athenian democracy and Athenian empire grow side by side, bound together more closely than later admirers sometimes wish to remember. Roads are not the main arteries of this empire. Sea lanes are. The Aegean becomes an Athenian space, not fully controlled in every wave and harbor, but watched, taxed, patrolled, and imagined through Athenian power. Cleruches and settlements extend influence. Colonies and allied cities shape networks of grain, timber, metals, and money. Piraeus grows into a bustling port of sailors, merchants, foreigners, craftsmen, officials, prostitutes, philosophers, laborers, and slaves. There, the world enters Athens plank by plank, jar by jar, rumor by rumor. Coinage makes power portable. The Athenian owl, stamped on silver, travels far beyond Attica. A coin can pay a rower, hire a craftsman, purchase grain, reward service, or announce trust in a city's weight and authority. Money simplifies exchange, but it also changes imagination. Value becomes measurable, transferable, countable, and taxable. Alongside older bonds of kin and honor, a more flexible economic world expands. Markets grow louder. Accounts matter more. Public finance becomes a pillar of greatness. Writing deepens the system. Decrees, tribute lists, treaties, casualty lists, dedications, accounts, laws, and public records make civic power visible. Stone becomes memory disciplined by the state. To inscribe is to declare permanence, even in a world where permanence is never guaranteed. A citizen walking past an inscription sees not only words, but authority made public. Writing allows a city to command beyond the reach of a single voice. It carries decisions across time. Architecture gives power a body. Temples, stoas, walls, harbors, theaters, council houses, and public spaces turn wealth into experience. A visitor does not need to read a decree to understand that Athens has become formidable. He can see it in the scale of building, the confidence of stone, the crowds in the agora, the ordered chaos of Piraeus, the sacred rebuilding of spaces once burned by Persia. Ruin is answered with construction. Trauma becomes monument. But Athens is not alone in creating durable systems. Sparta maintains a different order, severe and land-based, centered on discipline, hierarchy, military readiness, and the labor of the helots beneath it. Corinth thrives through trade and position. Syracuse rises in Sicily with wealth, fleets, tyrants, and ambition. Across the Greek world, cities refine laws, offices, alliances, military practices, sanctuaries, and traditions of belonging. The Greek genius is not one system, but experimentation itself. Each polis becomes a question answered differently, and the questions multiply. How much power should citizens hold? How should wealth serve the public? Can an alliance remain free under a dominant leader? Can democracy coexist with empire? Can discipline preserve equality? Or does it conceal oppression? Can law restrain ambition? Once victory has made ambition respectable. These are no longer private puzzles for poets and reformers. They are built into fleets, treasuries, courts, walls, and tribute ships. For a while the machinery works. The sea lanes hum. The festivals grow brighter. The buildings rise. The courts fill. The assemblies argue. The fleets patrol. Envoys arrive from island cities with cautious faces and required payments. Athens becomes both protector and pressure, school and master, inspiration and warning. Greek power has accelerated, and the world feels newly organized around it. Yet every system carries the memory of its beginning. What is built from fear can continue to need fear. What is justified by defense can learn to depend on control. What is strengthened by participation can be strained by expectation. The same structures that make Athens brilliant also make it vulnerable to resentment, rivalry, and overreach. The Greeks have learned to make power durable. Now they must learn what durability costs. For a while the world seems lit from within. Athens rises from the memory of fire into a city of stone, argument, music, dust, sacrifice, and restless invention. The Acropolis, once scarred by Persian destruction, becomes a sacred height of rebuilding. Marble is cut, hauled, lifted, measured, and fitted with extraordinary care. The work is not silent. It rings with hammers, ropes, commands, animal breath, and the scrape of sledges over prepared ground. Men sweat beneath the sun. Sculptors study cloth, muscle, horse, god, and gesture. Public money becomes visible in white stone. The Parthenon does not stand alone. It belongs to a larger world of sanctuaries, processions, festivals, treasuries, altars, and civic pride. To modern eyes, a temple may seem like a quiet ruin, an object for admiration beneath blue sky. To an ancient city, it is alive with offering, smoke, song, payment, politics, and presence. It is built for a goddess, but it also speaks for a people. It says that the city has survived. It says that order has returned. It says that beauty can answer devastation, though not erase it. Below the sacred rock, the agora pulses. Here, citizens meet, buy, accuse, listen, gossip, bargain, and decide. A man may come to purchase oil and remain to hear a political argument. A craftsman may pause beside his work while a speaker gathers a crowd. A stranger may hear laughter from one corner and a legal dispute from another. There are statues, altars, stoas, market stalls, public buildings, and dusty open spaces where the city reveals itself. The agora is not only a marketplace, it is the nervous system of the polis. In Athens, speech becomes a kind of power. A voice can persuade an assembly to build ships, punish allies, send armies, honor the dead, or change the law. Words can save a man in court or destroy him. Citizens learn to listen for rhythm, evidence, insult, memory, and fear. Rhetoric grows because public life demands it. The spoken sentence becomes an instrument as sharp as a spear, though far less predictable. A city governed by debate must trust speech, yet it must also fear being deceived by it. Across the theater of Dionysus, another kind of truth unfolds. Crowds gather to watch tragedies under the open sky. They see kings blinded by pride, mothers broken by grief, daughters sacrificed, cities cursed, heroes trapped between divine command and human law. The stories are old, but the wounds are present. Athenian spectators know war, ambition, exile, plague, and civic duty. When actors speak in masks, the city listens to itself from a distance. Myth becomes a mirror polished by sorrow. Comedy follows with sharper teeth. It mocks generals, philosophers, politicians, jurors, poets, and the public itself. Laughter becomes civic release, but also civic danger. In comedy, the city admits what it fears, envies, and suspects. It can laugh at its own habits, its vanity, its hunger for lawsuits, its imperial pretensions, and its clever men who twist language into knots. A civilization confident enough to stage its anxieties before thousands has achieved something rare, yet the laughter is never entirely harmless. Festivals gather the year into sacred time. The Panathenaea honors Athena with procession, sacrifice, music, contests, and woven cloth presented to the goddess. At Dionysian festivals, wine, song, drama, and transformation loosen the edges of ordinary life. At Eleusis, initiates enter mysteries connected with Demeter and Persephone, death and return, grain and hope. Some rites are public and brilliant, others are secretive and inward. Together, they remind the Greeks that human life stands between visible order and unseen depth. The gods are everywhere. Athena watches cities, craft, and strategic thought. Apollo carries music, prophecy, healing, and sudden destruction. Artemis moves at the edge of wilderness and childhood. Hera guards marriage and rank. Poseidon shakes earth and sea. Demeter feeds the fields. Dionysus enters wine, theater, frenzy, and release. Zeus stands over oath, storm, and kingship. Greek religion is not a single book or creed. It is practice, place, story, ritual, fear, gratitude, and negotiation with powers older and greater than the city. Yet alongside myth, another habit grows: questioning. In Ionia, southern Italy, Athens, and beyond, thinkers ask what the world is made of, how change occurs, whether nature follows patterns, and what human beings can know. Some look to water, air, number, boundless substance, atoms, or reason. They do not always reject the gods, but they begin to ask whether lightning, disease, stars, and matter might be understood through causes rather than stories alone. This is a quiet revolution, not because it answers everything, but because it changes the meaning of an answer. Socrates moves through Athens like an unsettling breeze. He leaves no writings of his own, yet his presence disturbs memory. He asks men what courage is, what justice is, what piety is, what virtue is. He does not ask as a distant scholar, but in the public spaces of the city, among citizens who believe they already understand the words they use. His questions are simple, almost too simple, and that is their danger. They reveal that people can act confidently while knowing less than they claim. The Golden Age is not only marble and philosophy, it is also workshops and hands. Potters shape clay into vessels that carry both wine and myth. Vase painters turn curved surfaces into battle scenes, banquets, gods, athletes, musicians, weddings, and funerals. Metalworkers refine armor, lamps, tools, figurines, and offerings. Shipwrights build the wooden bodies of naval power. Stonecutters carve inscriptions and grave markers. Women weave cloth in households whose labor rarely receives public glory. Slaves carry loads, mine silver, serve meals, tutor children, work fields, and sustain the freedom celebrated by others. The city is beautiful, but unequal. Citizenship is limited. Women, slaves, and many foreigners stand outside formal political power. Metics, resident foreigners, bring skill, trade, and wealth, yet lack full belonging. The democracy is radical for its citizens, but narrow in human terms. This contradiction does not sit at the edge of Greek civilization. It lies near its center. The same assembly that debates freedom depends on exclusions it does not fully question. The same city that stages suffering may refuse to see all suffering equally. Still, public life expands imagination. Juries allow ordinary citizens to judge. Assemblies give citizens a voice in policy. Offices are filled by election or lot. Pay for public service allows poorer citizens to participate more fully. Men who might once have remained silent under aristocratic dominance now enter the machinery of decision. They may be swayed, mistaken, noble, petty, brave, or foolish. Democracy does not make human beings wise. It makes their shared responsibility visible. Education shapes the young in uneven ways. Boys of citizen families may learn letters, music, poetry, exercise, and manners suited to public life. They memorize Homer, absorb stories of heroes, and learn the rhythms of speech and honor. Gymnasia train the body and create spaces of conversation. Symposiums gather elite men for wine, music, flirtation, poetry, and competitive wit. A young man is taught not only facts, but posture, memory, self-command, and ambition. He is being prepared to inhabit a city that watches and judges. The Greek worldview is full of measure, nothing too much. Says a wisdom carved near Apollo's sanctuary. Know yourself. Honor the gods. Remember mortality. Seek excellence, but beware pride. These sayings do not prevent excess. They exist because excess is always near. Greek myths are crowded with figures who cross limits and suffer for it. Kings boast, heroes rage, mortals rival gods, cities grow arrogant. The lesson is clear, but human beings rarely learn it for long. Burial customs reveal another tenderness. Grave markers show farewells carved in stone. A hand extended, a seated woman with attendants, a warrior remembered, a child gone too soon. These images are quieter than temples, but no less moving. They remind us that every golden age is lived by mortal people who lose one another. Behind the public splendor are private rooms, sickbeds, mourning songs, and small offerings left by those who continue walking through the city after love has gone underground. Beyond Athens, Greek culture shines in many forms. Sparta honors discipline, endurance, and a severe communal ideal. Corinth thrives in commerce and craft. Thebes carries its own myths and ambitions. Syracuse grows powerful in Sicily, wealthy and turbulent beneath Western light. Greek cities in Asia Minor continue to think, build, trade, and suffer beneath shifting powers. No single polis owns Greek civilization. Athens burns brightest in memory. But the larger Greek world is a sky of many fires, and yet Athens gives the age its most haunting image, a city arguing under the sun while temples rise above it. A people capable of exquisite sculpture and ruthless policy. A democracy sustained by empire. A theater where suffering becomes art. A marketplace where philosophy interrupts daily business. A port where foreign goods and ideas arrive with every ship. A sacred rock glowing at sunset while below. Citizens shout, accuse, vote, pray, buy fish, and hurry home through dust. For a while the world seems still, but beneath the music, stone and festivals, pressure gathers, wealth breeds envy, empire breeds resentment, confidence sharpens into arrogance, allies become subjects, rival cities watch. The systems that create brilliance also create strain. The golden age is real, But it is not weightless. It stands on labor, tribute, memory, discipline, exclusion, and belief. The light is beautiful. The shadows are already there. At the height of its power, Athens seems almost impossible to quiet. The city speaks in stone, silver, ships, festivals, decrees, and human voices rising in assembly beneath the open sky. From Piraeus, triremes slide into the sea like sharpened thoughts. Tribute arrives from islands and coastal cities. Envoys climb the roads with careful faces. Craftsmen hammer, carve, paint, and measure. The agora fills with citizens, merchants, visitors, philosophers, informers, servants, and slaves. Above them all, the Acropolis catches the sun, and its marble seems to promise that the city has found a way to make glory permanent. But permanence is a dangerous dream. Athens has become more than a polis. It is a democracy at home and an empire abroad, and the two are tied together by money, ships, and confidence. The assembly can vote on war, tribute, punishment, building, alliances, and distant expeditions. Ordinary citizens, at least adult male citizens, participate in decisions that affect islands they may never see. The voice of the people is powerful, but power traveling over water can sound very different to those who receive it as command. The Athenian Empire is not held only by fear. It offers protection, naval order, access to trade, common measures, and a place within a powerful maritime system. Pirates can be suppressed. Persian pressure can be resisted. Sea lanes can be watched. A smaller city may benefit from the security of Athenian strength, especially if it has enemies nearby. Yet protection is rarely innocent when one city decides its price. Tribute assessed in silver becomes a habit. A garrison can arrive in the name of stability. A rebellious ally can be punished in the name of order. This is the hidden weakness of imperial confidence. It teaches the ruling city to confuse necessity with virtue. Athens remembers Persian fire, remembers evacuation, remembers Marathon and Salamis, remembers the desperate years when Greek freedom trembled. These memories are real, but memory can become armor for ambition. When Athens tightens control, it can tell itself that it is defending the world that once defended itself. When allies resist, Athens can call resistance ingratitude. The old fear of domination slowly becomes the practice of dominating others. Inside the city, democracy grows more intense. Citizens serve on juries, attend assemblies, hold offices, inspect accounts, debate policy, and judge public men. Political life is not distant. It is immediate, noisy, personal, and demanding. A farmer may leave his field to vote on matters of empire. A craftsman may sit in judgment over a wealthy speaker. A poor citizen may receive payment for public service and feel that the city has made room for his presence. In this, Athens is extraordinary. Yet participation also has a cost. A large public can be stirred by fear, anger, hope, wounded pride, or persuasive speech. A skilled orator can turn uncertainty into certainty. Rumor can become policy. Suspicion can become prosecution. The same openness that allows debate also allows volatility. A city governed by citizens must trust citizens with power. But citizens are human. They can be brave, wise, petty, impatient, generous, cruel, and easily flattered. Democracy gives dignity to public judgment. It does not make judgment safe. Pericles stands at the center of this world. He is not a king, though enemies may speak, as if he behaves like one. He is a statesman, general, aristocrat, and master of civic persuasion. Under his influence, Athens deepens its democracy, strengthens its empire, adorns its sacred spaces, and imagines itself as the school of Greece. He understands the power of image. Stone matters, ceremony matters, naval strength matters, public pay matters. The city must not merely be strong, it must appear worthy of its strength. For a generation, his vision holds. Athens becomes a place where political energy and artistic brilliance feed one another. The citizen body sees itself reflected in temples, drama, public speeches, and military success. There is a confidence in the air, a sense that Athens has discovered a form of life more daring than monarchy and more radiant than old aristocratic rule. It can debate and build. It can fight and philosophize. It can honor gods and question tradition. It can command ships and stage tragedies about the ruin of command. And yet, beneath this surface of order, the city strained. The empire must be maintained. Tribute must be collected. Ships must be crewed. Allies must be watched. Rival cities must be answered. Public works require resources. Political rivals accuse one another of corruption, impiety, softness, tyranny, or betrayal. The more powerful Athens becomes, the more enemies its power creates. Greatness does not reduce fear. It multiplies the directions from which fear may come. Sparta watches. To many Greeks, Sparta represents an opposite form of strength. Its citizens are trained for discipline, endurance, obedience, and war. Its society rests on the labor of the Helots, whose subjugation gives Spartan citizens the time to become soldiers, but also creates permanent anxiety beneath the Spartan system. Sparta fears revolt from below and encirclement from abroad. It distrusts Athenian restlessness, naval expansion, democratic energy, and imperial reach. Athens seems fluid, talkative, maritime, inventive. Sparta seems hard, silent, land-bound, and severe. Both cities admire and fear what they are not. This is a dangerous kind of rivalry. Athens may see Spartan caution as backwardness, Spartan power as repression, Spartan allies as obstacles. Sparta may see Athenian innovation as disorder, Athenian empire as aggression, Athenian rhetoric as deception. Around them, other polis choose, hesitate, maneuver, complain, and prepare. Corinth fears Athenian interference with trade. Smaller states fear being trapped between giants. Alliances harden like clay in the sun. Maximum power often feels like security to those inside it. From within Athens, the walls seem strong. The fleet seems unmatched. The treasury seems deep. The citizens seem proud. The gods have been honored with temples and festivals. The city has survived impossible danger before. Why should it not survive again? Confidence has its own music, and Athens hears it everywhere, in the harbor, the theater, the assembly, and the shining marble above the city. But walls can become a trap. The long walls connecting Athens to Piraeus are a marvel of strategic thinking. They allow the city to remain supplied by sea, even if enemies ravage Attica. They make Athens difficult to starve, provided its fleet controls the water. Yet they also change the psychology of war. Fields may be abandoned. Rural families may crowd inside. Disease may spread. Farmers may watch smoke rise from land their fathers worked, while politicians speak of strategy. A system designed for endurance may demand emotional sacrifices the city has not fully measured. Inequality remains another fracture. Wealthy citizens fund public services and seek honor, but resent burdens. Poor citizens gain political influence, but remain economically vulnerable. Slaves work mines, homes, fields, workshops, and ship support systems. Women sustain households, yet stand outside assemblies. Allies pay tribute that beautifies Athens more than their own cities. The splendor of the center depends on many people who do not share equally in its glory. In the bright language of civic achievement, their voices are often faint. There are also weaknesses of the soul. Success makes moderation difficult. A city praised by itself and feared by others may begin to mistake cleverness for wisdom. It may punish dissent as disloyalty. It may believe every crisis can be solved by another decree, another fleet, another speech, another expedition. It may grow impatient with limits. Greek moral thought often warns against hubris, the dangerous swelling of pride that invites ruin. Athens knows the word. Knowing is not the same as obeying. Far beyond Athens, resentment accumulates. An island city forced to remain in the League remembers its lost autonomy. A merchant in Corinth curses Athenian restrictions. A Spartan elder hears reports and sees danger in every Athenian success. A farmer in Attica trusts the navy, but still fears what will happen when enemy soldiers enter his land. A rower in Piraeus depends on imperial wages. A subject ally pays tribute and wonders when protection became possession. Each person holds only a fragment of the pressure. Together, the fragments form a storm at maximum power. The Greek world is magnificent and unstable. Its cities have created laws, fleets, temples, drama, philosophy, coinage, alliances, and civic identities of astonishing force. They have shown how small communities can generate enormous cultural energy. They have resisted empire from abroad and built empires of their own. They have taught citizens to speak, judge, fight, worship, build, remember, and question. But they have not solved the problem of ambition. They have not learned how brilliance can live peacefully beside rivalry. For a while Athens still glows. At sunset, the marble softens to gold. Ships rock in the harbor. Theaters empty into evening streets. A citizen walks home after hearing speeches about honor and danger. A woman folds woven cloth inside a quiet house. A slave descends toward the mines. An allied envoy counts what his city owes. A Spartan messenger rides through dust. The world seems ordered, but the order is tense. The strongest hour is not always the safest. Sometimes it is the hour just before the first crack widens. The storm begins with fear, wearing the mask of reason. Athens and Sparta do not rush into ruin because they are foolish in any simple way. Each believes it is defending necessity. Each sees the other growing too strong, too confident, too dangerous to ignore. Around them, allies complain, rivals provoke, merchants lose patience, and smaller cities discover that the quarrels of great powers can enter their streets like winter rain under a door. Greece has known war before, but this conflict feels different. It does not promise a single campaign, a single border adjustment, or a single act of punishment. It threatens to become a struggle over the shape of the Greek world itself. The Peloponnesian War is not born in one place. It gathers from disputes, alliances, insults, fears, and calculations. Corinth, a commercial power with its own grievances, presses Sparta to act against Athenian expansion. Corcyra, Potidæa, Megara, and other names become pieces in a tightening net. Athens imposes pressure. Sparta hesitates, then judges that Athenian power has become intolerable. Both sides speak of justice. Both prepare for violence. The old Greek habit of rivalry now stands upon systems large enough to drag whole regions into exhaustion. Sparta leads a land alliance. Athens commands the sea. This contrast shapes everything. Sparta and its allies can invade Attica, burn farms, cut trees, and force Athenians to watch the countryside suffer. Athens, protected by its long walls and supplied through Piraeus, can avoid decisive land battle while striking by sea, raiding coasts, guarding routes, and using money from its empire. It is a war not only of soldiers, but of endurance. Each city asks its people to tolerate a different kind of pain. For Athenian farmers, the strategy is bitter. They leave their fields and crowd behind walls. The city fills with people from the countryside, with animals, possessions, grief, and anger. Men who once slept near their own vines now breathe the close air of crowded spaces. They hear reports that Spartan troops are cutting down olive trees whose roots may have belonged to their families for generations. Pericles tells them to endure, to trust the fleet, to think beyond the immediate wound. Strategy may be sound, but it cannot keep the heart from breaking. Then plague enters Athens. It comes through the crowded city with terrible intimacy. Bodies burn with fever. Thirst torments the sick. Families collapse around one another. Funeral customs break under the weight of death. The disciplined language of public policy cannot contain the private horror inside houses, streets, and sanctuaries. Men who once argued about empire now watch neighbors die faster than grief can name them. Faith trembles. Law weakens. Shame loses force when people no longer know whether they will live long enough to be judged. Pericles himself dies. With him passes not only a leader, but a certain kind of restraint. He had urged firmness without reckless expansion, confidence without surrender to panic. After him, Athenian politics grows more volatile. New leaders rise who speak more sharply to anger, pride, and impatience. The assembly remains powerful, but power under pressure can become restless. A wounded democracy may demand victory not only for survival, but to prove that suffering had meaning. War changes the moral weather. Cities begin to do things they once would have condemned more easily. At Mytilene, after revolt against Athens, rage drives the assembly toward a brutal decision. Then hesitation softens it just in time. The debate reveals a frightening truth. Empire must decide how cruel it is willing to be in order to remain empire. Mercy may invite rebellion. Terror may corrupt the ruler. Between those choices, Athens searches for a path and finds none that stays clean. Elsewhere, civil strife tears communities apart. In Corcyra, factional violence becomes a nightmare of suspicion and revenge. Words change their meaning. Recklessness is praised as courage. Prudence is mocked as cowardice. Kinship bends beneath party hatred. Sacred spaces no longer protect. Men kill not only for policy, but for accumulated resentment, fear, and opportunity. The war between Athens and Sparta becomes a fire in which local grievances ignite. Once order breaks, old neighbors can become enemies with astonishing speed. This is one of the darkest revelations of Greek history. The polis, so carefully built around belonging, law, ritual, and shared memory, can turn against itself. The same closeness that once made civic life intense can make civil conflict merciless. People know where their enemies live. They know their families, debts, secrets, and habits. Public language becomes poisoned. Justice becomes faction. The city does not need foreign invaders to suffer collapse. Sometimes it carries the invader inside its own divided heart. Beyond the Greek mainland, Persia watches and waits. The empire, once resisted by united Greek courage, now becomes a source of money, diplomacy, and manipulation. Persian satraps can support one side or another, not out of love for Greek cities, but because division serves imperial interest. This is another reversal. The Greeks, who had once defined themselves against Persian power, now fight one another so bitterly that Persian influence returns through gold, treaties, and calculation. Freedom, when divided against itself, creates openings for those patient enough to exploit it. Sparta also faces pressure beneath its discipline. Its society depends on the Helots, the subjugated population whose labor supports the Spartan citizen body. Every long war raises anxiety. Every campaign away from home requires confidence that the order at home will hold. Spartan strength is real, but narrow. Its citizen numbers are limited. Its system is severe, admired by some and feared by others, but not easily adaptable. A city built for endurance can still be strained by time, loss, and uncertainty. Athens, for all its brilliance, becomes tempted by distance. The Sicilian expedition begins as ambition dressed in opportunity. Sicily is rich. Syracuse is powerful. Western expansion promises grain, prestige, and perhaps a decisive transformation of the war. Speakers persuade. Hope overcomes caution. A great fleet sails from Athens in a spectacle of confidence. Families gather to watch the ships depart, bright with equipment, prayers, and expectation. It must have seemed, for a moment, that the city's strength could carry it beyond fear, but distance is a silent enemy. In Sicily, Athenian confidence meets unfamiliar terrain, determined resistance, poor coordination, delays, and the hard reality of campaigning far from home. Syracuse does not collapse. The expedition grows trapped by its own scale. Reinforcements come, but so does deeper danger. The harbor that had promised victory becomes a cage. Ships are battered. Men are exhausted. Disease and despair spread. Commanders hesitate, argue, and pray beneath hostile skies. The disaster is immense. Athenians and allies are defeated on land and sea. Survivors are hunted, captured, killed, or imprisoned in the stone quarries of Syracuse, where thirst, wounds, hunger, and exposure turn defeat into prolonged suffering. The expedition that sailed out like a vision returns in fragments, and many do not return at all. Athens has not merely lost men and ships, it has lost the aura of inevitability. Its enemies understand this. Its allies understand this. Athens understands it too, though pride resists the full knowledge. Revolt spreads through the empire. Subject cities see weakness and take their chance. Sparta adapts, with Persian support helping build a fleet capable of challenging Athens where Athens once felt most secure. The war moves into the Aegean with renewed intensity. Money grows scarce, trust thins, oligarchic conspiracies appear in Athens. Democracy itself is shaken, briefly overthrown, restored, and tested again. The city that once seemed to contain its arguments within law now feels the edge of internal fracture. And still Athens fights. This is important. Decline is not the same as immediate collapse. Even after plague, invasion, political upheaval, imperial revolts, and Sicily, the Athenians show astonishing resilience. They rebuild fleets, they win battles, they debate, accuse, improvise, and endure. The city is wounded but not passive. Its energy remains formidable. Yet resilience can prolong suffering when no side can find a peace that pride will accept. At last, the pressure becomes unbearable. Sparta's commander Lysander, aided by Persian resources and disciplined strategy, strikes at the Athenian lifeline. At Aegospotami, the Athenian fleet is destroyed or captured with devastating efficiency. Without the fleet, Athens cannot protect its grain routes. Without grain, the walls become less a defense than an enclosure. Hunger enters the city. The empire dissolves, allies fall away. The sea road that once made Athens mighty now reveals its dependence. Athens surrenders in 404 before Christ. The long walls are torn down to the sound of flute music, according to later memory, as if the destruction itself were a ceremony. The fleet is reduced, the empire is gone. Sparta imposes an oligarchic regime remembered as the 30 Tyrants, and Athens descends into fear, executions, confiscations, exile, and revenge. Liberation from Athenian empire has not brought gentle freedom to Athens itself. Victory, too, has shadows. Yet Sparta's triumph does not heal Greece. The balance of power shifts, but the old disease remains. Spartan dominance breeds resentment. Thebes rises. Persia continues to influence Greek affairs. Alliances form and break. Mercenary warfare spreads. Citizens grow tired. Farms and finances suffer. The Greek world, so brilliant in its independence, cannot easily create a durable peace among equals. Each city fears being ruled. Each strong city is tempted to rule. The 4th century brings new pressures from the north. Macedon, long viewed by many southern Greeks as peripheral, grows stronger under Philip II. He learns from Greek warfare, diplomacy, siegecraft, and division. He reforms armies. He uses marriage, gold, promises, hostages, speed, and patience. Greek cities argue over whether to resist him, ally with him, underestimate him, or use him against their rivals. By the time many understand the scale of the danger, Macedonian power has already entered the Greek political system like a blade through loosened armor. At Chaeronea, Greek resistance is broken. Athens and Thebes fight, but Philip's army prevails. The age of fiercely independent polis is not ended in daily life, but it is transformed in political reality. The cities remain culturally alive, proud, argumentative, and locally important. Yet the old freedom to determine the Greek world by themselves has narrowed. A new power now stands above them, speaking Greek, admiring Greek culture, and commanding with a king's authority. The threats had come from outside and within. Persian pressure, Spartan invasion, plague, imperial revolt, factional hatred, Sicilian disaster, oligarchic terror, Theban challenge, Macedonian rise. But beneath all of them lay a deeper difficulty. The Greeks had created intense, brilliant, self-conscious communities, each fiercely attached to autonomy and honor. They had not found a lasting way to prevent autonomy from becoming rivalry, rivalry from becoming war, and war from inviting domination. For a while the cities still speak. They teach, trade, worship, write, remember, and argue. The theaters do not vanish. The temples do not fall silent all at once. Philosophers continue to ask what justice is, perhaps with more urgency because justice has been so visibly wounded. Mothers still light hearths, farmers still prune vines, sailors still watch the wind. But the age has changed. Something old has cracked, and through the crack enters a world of kings, leagues, larger armies, and wider horizons. The polis survives, its innocence does not. The end of ancient Greece does not arrive as silence. It arrives as transformation. Cities still stand, markets still open, priests still tend altars, teachers still gather students, farmers still walk out beneath morning light to inspect vines, olives, barley, and stone boundaries. Athens does not vanish after defeat. Sparta does not vanish after its supremacy fades. Thebes rises, shines, and suffers. Corinth trades. Delphi receives visitors. Olympia still remembers the sacred rhythm of games. Across the Aegean, harbors continue to fill with sailors, jars, arguments, prayers, and news. History rarely closes a door so neatly. But the old world has changed. The age when independent polis could imagine themselves as the highest political horizon begins to recede. Macedonian kings now stand above the Greek cities, first Philip, then Alexander, whose ambition turns Greek language, warfare, myth, and learning toward distances no earlier city-state could command. The armies march east through Anatolia, Syria, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Persia, and beyond. Cities are founded or renamed. Greek becomes a language of administration, culture, trade, and prestige across a vast Hellenistic world. This is not the death of Greece. It is Greece loosened from its original landscape. The civilization born among mountains, islands, harbors, and small civic communities now travels through kingdoms in Alexandria, Antioch, Pergamon, Seleucia, and countless other places. Greek art, literature, philosophy, science, and political vocabulary mingle with Egyptian, Persian, Babylonian, Jewish, Anatolian, and many other traditions. The polis remains, but it is no longer alone at the center of imagination. Kings build libraries, sponsor scholars, raise monuments, and claim heroic descent. The scale has changed from city to world. Yet something is lost. In Athens, an old citizen might still walk through the agora and hear argument, but the air is different. Decisions made in assemblies no longer carry the same sovereign weight. Foreign garrisons, royal decrees, leagues, envoys, and shifting monarchies press upon civic life. Freedom survives in language, law, memory, and local practice, but not always in power. The city remains proud, but pride must now negotiate with forces larger than itself. The philosophers feel this altered world. When the polis no longer seems able to guarantee meaning, thinkers turn more deeply toward the soul, the household, the garden, the inner citadel of self-command. The Stoics speak of virtue under fate and a cosmos ordered by reason. The Epicureans seek peace through moderated desire, friendship, and freedom from needless fear. Skeptics question certainty itself. These are not retreats from history. They are responses to a world in which the individual must learn how to live when political greatness has become unstable. Then Rome comes. At first, Rome is one power among others in the Western Mediterranean. Then it grows. It crosses seas, defeats rivals, intervenes in Greek affairs, and gradually makes itself unavoidable. Greek cities and leagues seek Roman friendship, fear Roman judgment, and sometimes resist Roman command. In 146 before Christ, Corinth is destroyed by Roman forces, a date later remembered as a harsh marker of Greek submission. The same year, far to the west, Carthage also falls. The Mediterranean is being reordered. Rome conquers Greece, but Greece enters Rome. This is one of history's most delicate reversals. Roman armies defeat Greek armies. Roman governors administer Greek territories. Roman power commands where Greek cities once argued among themselves. Yet educated Romans study Greek language, sculpture, rhetoric, philosophy, medicine, literature, and myth. Greek tutors teach Roman children. Greek statues fill Roman villas. Greek gods are identified with Roman gods. Greek thought becomes part of Roman self-understanding. The conquered become teachers of the conquerors. Still, conquest has weight. A marble statue carried away from a sanctuary is not merely art changing location, it is memory displaced. A city taxed by a foreign power does not feel honored because its poetry is admired. Greek culture spreads widely, but Greek political independence narrows. This tension runs through the long afterlife of Greece. Its beauty is celebrated by those who possess power over it. Its ideas travel, even as its cities live beneath other people's decisions. Centuries pass. Temples are repaired, reused, neglected, converted, or broken. The old gods lose public authority as Christianity grows across the Roman world. Philosophical schools continue, change, argue, and eventually fade or are closed. Statues fall, are buried, burned for lime, admired, copied, or forgotten. The Parthenon becomes a church, then later a mosque, then a ruin wounded by war. The stones survive not because history is kind, but because stone endures what human systems cannot. The landscape remains. Olive trees still twist in dry soil. Cicadas still sing in summer heat. The Aegean still flashes under morning light. Mountains still divide valleys. Winds still move through island harbors. A traveler walking among ruins may feel that the columns belong to another species of time. But the same sun warms them. The same sea carries salt into the air. The same earth that taught early communities scarcity and movement still lies beneath broken sanctuaries and modern roads. What did Greece leave behind? Not a perfect model, not a lost paradise. It left questions carved into civilization's memory. Who should rule? What is justice? Can law restrain power? Can citizens govern themselves without destroying one another? What is beauty for? Why do the proud fall? How should human beings face suffering? Is nature understandable? Can reason and myth live in the same mind? What do the living owe the dead? These questions outlived the armies that first carried them. It left forms: theater, history writing, philosophical dialogue, political debate, athletic competition, mathematical proof, architectural proportion, civic inscription, public law, and the habit of examining words that everyone uses but few define. Later cultures did not receive these forms unchanged. They translated them, argued with them, misused them, revived them, and transformed them. But the Greek imprint remained, sometimes clear as a column, sometimes hidden like a foundation under a later wall. It also left warnings. Democracy can be brilliant and reckless. Empire can grow from fear. Freedom can depend on exclusion. Beauty can stand beside cruelty. Education can sharpen wisdom or vanity. Rivalry can inspire excellence, then consume the very world it helped create. A city can defeat an enemy and still be endangered by itself. These lessons are not comforting, but they are enduring. Greece speaks not only through achievement, but through ruin. Walk now, in the evening, through the remains of an ancient city. The crowds are gone. The assembly no longer votes. The theater seats are empty. The altar is cold. Grass grows between stones polished by vanished feet. A lizard moves across a fallen block. The wind passes through column drums lying in the dust. Somewhere nearby, a modern road hums faintly, but among the ruins time seems to breathe more slowly. Nothing commands here now. Nothing demands tribute. Nothing votes for war. And yet the silence is full. It holds voices. A farmer worried about debt. A rower pulling through dark water. A sculptor smoothing marble. A woman weaving by lamplight. A child learning Homer. A slave carrying ore from a mine. A citizen raising his hand in assembly. A philosopher asking one question too many. A soldier looking across a plain before dawn. A mourner touching a grave marker and whispering a name. Civilizations do not disappear all at once. They settle into language, habits, laws, stones, stories, and dreams. Ancient Greece survives because later people kept returning to it, not only to praise it, but to ask themselves what had begun there, what had failed there, and what still remained unfinished. Its ruins do not answer loudly. They invite listening. So we leave the Greek world where it has always lived best, between light and shadow. The sea is darkening now. The marble cools. The hills soften into evening. Far above the old sanctuaries, stars appear one by one, as they did for shepherds, sailors, poets, kings, exiles, and citizens who stood beneath the same sky and wondered what human life might become. Their cities rose, fought, glittered, suffered, and changed. Their power passed away, but the questions remained awake, and softly, across the long night of history, Greece is still asking them.